My wonderful people of Biafra, lovers of freedom, I welcome you to Skolante TV, where we bring to you news that concerns the restoration of Biafra and freedom all over the world. In this video, I will be bringing to you the speech that PM Simon Ekpa made regarding to the freedom of the people, starting from very long time, the history of the past freedom fighters down to today, and a powerful speech for that matter. But before I dive into it, let me quickly welcome back to my channel those of you that have been following my videos, and if you are new, I welcome you and urge you to do well to subscribe, like the video, press that bell icon so that anytime I upload a video you'll be notified, and you can share the video as well for others to get to hear the message.
Good evening, fellow Biafrans, from wherever you are. My name is Mazi, a European representative of the government in exile. Welcome to this evening's edition of the State of the Nation address from the Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic Government in Exile. Towards the end of this program, we are going to have the question and the answer section, of which we are going to take the questions from the Twitter space. So please prepare your questions while the Prime Minister would be ready to take on those questions. Now I would introduce the Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic Government in Exile in the name of Mazi Simon Ekpa. Welcome, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, fellow Biafrans. Good evening, lovers of freedom. Good evening, the friends of Biafrans all over the world that have seated this evening to listen to the State of the Union address by the Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic Government in Exile, officially the United States of Biafra. I welcome you all, ladies and gentlemen of the press, to this evening historic speech. We will be addressing a lot of issues, especially the new face of the Biafra liberation as we prepare to go to the poll for the Biafra self-referendum, which is starting on the 1st of February 2024. This evening's speech by my humble self will be focused on the evolution of freedom and human rights. And I will be making references to different heroes and heroines of this world. The evolution of freedom and human rights. On behalf of the Biafra government in exile, I appreciate Biafrans for their unwavering support so far. I also call on Biafrans world over to stand firm and continue to stand with the Biafra government, both in the exile and in the de facto government of the homeland, as we embark on a next phase of our liberation, which is self-referendum. I want to remind us today, however, how our heroes and heroines of the past changed our world today, starting from as far back as 1380, over 630 years. Some of us who may be very conversant about freedom fighting may have come across a very famous speech made by John Ball titled, "All Men by Nature Were Created Alike. Evolution of Freedom." In May 1381, Wycliffe priest called John Ball addressed a group of rebelling laborers who would later take part in the so then called peasant revolt, a revolt that was partly caused by the introduction of the 1380 tax. In his great speech, Ball argued that all men by nature were created alike, that the servitude of agricultural workers continued what he called an unjust oppression. He argued they serve to cast off the yoke of bondage and recover liberty. They should fight for equality in liberty and battle against degree, nobility, and class. It is these words that are often cited as the inspiration for the June 1381 revolt led by Wat Tyler. Today, these ideas may sound pretty normal to us and many of you 21st century humans. But the truth is that this speech was made over 630 years ago, when it was considered very dangerous to even think that such thing should be said by anyone, let alone preach it. That's why this speech is very important in freedom fighting. Sadly, both Ball and Taylor were executed for this word as traitors for their egalitarian views. They were killed because their pro-socialist and progressive belief were seen as a threat 630 years ago. They saw them and their speeches as a threat to the established order of the society. Still, their actions and their words live on. Their word that was considered dangerous, that led to their death, has become part of human rights laws that we all enjoy today, but they died for it. It is not because they were killed, but indeed their views has become part of international laws for a progressive world. This I would say, was a foundation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that all men are equal, but Ball and Tyler died for saying and advocating for it. That is evolution of freedom and human rights. What was abolished, what was a dangerous thing 630 years ago, has become your law today, because somebody stood and said it. That's why, as a Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic Government in Exile, it does not matter what you call me today.
Yes.
What matters to me is what you call me after 10 years.
Yes.
When I have liberated my people. This is the reason many countries like Finland, who are well advanced, can't hand Simon Ekpa over to any terrorist country, like Nigeria, for standing firm, fighting and defending his people, and I stand to be challenged anywhere. Finland is living in the future. It's a fact. My fellow Biafrans, let me remind you that there is another great speech called "Let Us Make reparation to Africa. Reparation is today word that many human rights activists, many freedom fighters are preaching freely, including the government that killed for such word. Reparation to Africa was first made by William Wilberforce. William Wilberforce was an 18th century British politician, famed for his battle against the slave trade. On the 12th of May 1789, Wilberforce addressed the House of Commons. With a fearful precision, he argued them to vote for the slave trade abolition in the British Empire, citing inhuman practices as an effusion of human blood. Then, the advocacy of Wilberforce was so dangerous, become a threat to the British Empire. 2 years before Wilberforce made the speech, 132 African slaves were thrown into the sea from a slave ship. Hence, the reference to human blood. He criticized the use of violence and tyranny among seamen and merchants towards slaves, and cited his belief in the commandment, "Thou shalt not murder," as the source of his abolitionist belief. Wilberforce also argued, "Thou shalt do no murder," as the source of his abolitionist belief. He argued that such cruel trade could not possibly be regulated or conducted in a human way. Total abolition is the only possible cure, he argued. This speech made by Wilberforce made any plea of ignorance on the part of his fellow MPs at the House of Commons of the United Kingdom. Made them untenable. The callousness of the slave trade was revealed for all to see for the very first time. The campaign of Wilberforce and others to bring to an end to slavery was a very hard fight. They fought it. This speech was a significant moment in bringing about the British West Indies in 1807 and the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833, which abolished slavery throughout the British Empire. This is evolution of freedom. I want you to pay attention to today's State of the Union, where we are making history the way it is, to make sure we save our people from the hand of the Nigeria Islamic State. We will make a very tough decisions as we move on from today going forward. This decision will later become history. So I'm making references to the other heroes and heroines of this world, who at the time of their own freedom fighting, everything they did became abominable, only for what they did to become the law that guides the universe today. It is the evolution of freedom fighting and freedom. It is important to educate our people while we are taking the steps of the Biafra government. The Biafra government are taking the step it's taking today, is that we have figured out what will work for us against Nigeria. It is also very important to educate our people how history are made as we go to the poll for our self-referendum. Because they continue to ask, is US supporting you? Is America supporting you? Do you have European Union observers? And I have told them we don't need any of those observers. We are conducting this referendum by ourselves, And we are going to declare Biafra, defend it with every mechanism that we have. And it will go down in history as Biafran used every mechanism to liberate themselves from Nigeria Islamic State. In the United States, a woman had no right to vote in an election until a woman called Susan Anthony fought for it. Somebody somewhere have to always stood up and fight.
Yes.
Somebody somewhere had always stood up to fight before change could happen. That is exactly what the Prime Minister of Biafra Republic Government in Exile, Simon Ekpa, and the entire cabinet and the entire government in exile are doing today. Somebody somewhere have to start this fight, and it will be successful at the end of the day. When you remain resolute and never change your principle according to who you meet. The question Susan Anthony asked in one of her famous speech was, are women person? Susan Anthony was an American suffragette and a co-founder of the National Women Suffrage Association, a group that fought for women's right to vote in the United States. In 1872, she became the first American woman to vote in an election. Listen, just 1872, women didn't have the right to vote in America. 1872. This woman took it upon herself to fight and liberated women from the shackles of the American system that made them lesser human. She became the first American woman to vote in an election, albeit illegally. She was charged in January of 1873 for voting without a lawful right to vote. Though she wasn't allowed to speak, even to defend herself in the court. She made this speech of our women person in the month running up to her trial. In the speech, she argued that in voting, she was simply exercising her right, citizens' right. Quoting the U.S. Constitution, she pointed out that it was not the white male citizens that formed the Union of the State of America, but we, the people, and that as a person, she deserved the right to participate in democracy. Are women person? She famously asked. If so, she then argued, they are citizens of the United States. Why then should they not have the right to vote? I want you to listen to understand the evolution of freedom. Before she did it, nobody ever stood up to fight for women's right to vote in the United States. She took it upon herself, and today women can vote. But it wasn't only women. It wasn't only women, right, that she campaigned for. She also argued that black people should have right to vote, since they also are persons and thus U.S. citizens. This idea of personhood may seem very simple, but Susan Anthony's argument points out the absurdity of women exclusion from democracy. In this United States, many of you are enjoying today as women and voting and kicking against the freedom of Biafra. Equality before the law was her radical aspiration. Despite her cogent argument, she was found guilty. She was found guilty for rising up against the system that excluded women right to vote. She was found guilty in the United States Court of Law and was fined $100. To show her commitment to what she believed in, to her cause, she refused to pay that fine of $100. You know what is $100? As far back as 1870 something. $100. That should be millions of dollars today. She refused to pay that fine and continued to campaign voraciously for female suffrage, a battle that was eventually won in 1919. From 1870 something to 1919, she won the battle against the women exclusion in the United States democracy. Today, many Biafrans in the United States, many Biafran of Nigeria, because the Biafrans in the United States are supporting what we're doing today. Many women from Biafra of Nigeria are enjoying the voting right in America, but a woman like you fought for it. My respect to those Biafran women who are deeply involved in the Biafran government. You are making history as part of the evolution of freedom for a better society. Suzanne Best quote, "I declare to you that women must not depend on the protection of man, but must taught to protect herself. And there I take my stand." This was one of the best quotes of Suzanne Anthony. Today, this Suzanne quote has become the policy and the law of Finland. The reason you can't touch me in Finland, Finland understands the evolution of freedom, and it is my right to fight and protect my people, and that I will do until our freedom is achieved. While in Africa today, many countries in Africa are against same-sex marriage. I want you to understand the evolution of freedom because of our culture in Africa. But let me remind you that America was there centuries ago. Where Africa is today, America was there centuries ago. And let me also make it very clear, I am not advocating for same-sex marriage. I am only taking you back to the history and the evolution of freedom. This, what American government, including the President of America, is supporting today. Of course, not Donald Trump. But those, Obama, Biden, and co, supporting today was abomination in America centuries ago. A man called Oscar Wilde, in his speech, "Love that dare not speak its name." This renewed speech by Oscar Wilde, made during his trial for gross indecency with other male person. This is perhaps one of the most emotional and poignant speech ever made. In it, Wilde Oscar described his love for Lord Alfred Douglas as such a great affection of an elder man for a young man. Choose the love that dare not speak its name. He described his love as beautiful, fine, and noblest form of affection. But Wilde Oscar explained the word does not understand it. He explained that the world back then does not understand it. Indeed, they mock his love as unnatural and unlawful. But wide speech proved just the opposite, that there is, in fact, nothing like unnatural about it. After the speech, the atheist Max Weber told a friend that Oscar's speech was simply wonderful and carried the whole court right away, quite tremendous burst of applause. But in all the applauses given to Wilde, it was not enough. A second trial, Wilde was sentenced to 2 years in prison with hard labor for nothing other than his attraction to a member of the same sex. It was this time in prison that led to his tragic death. He died in prison a few years later. But today, the present and the past president of the United States of America are in the forefront, championing same-sex marriage, that somebody was sentenced to death and the person, 2 years with hard labor, and the person died in prison. Obama, Biden, and many of them in the United States today, leaders, are the one championing same-sex marriage. It has become law and legal, but someone in the name of Oscar Wilde died for it. Fellow Biafrans, evolution of freedom. You make history and make history happen. That is what Simon Ekpa, under the Biafra Republic government in exile, is doing. That history is what I and the entire cabinet and the supporters and sponsors are making today.
Yes.
As the fight for equality of women continued as far back as 1900, one of the leading feminist activists called Pankhurst incited a meeting to rebellion. Pankhurst was quoted by Nelson Mandela as supporting their militancy rebellion against apartheid. She said in a meeting, "I incite this meeting to rebellion." This particular stand by Emmeline Pankhurst is similar to a radical feminist message, that of militant protest and action. In her speech, she was made and become the leader of this Women's Social and Political Union. She herself set that particular union up in October 1912. And it stirred up the passion of all who heard it. Amongst other things, Pankhurst, as the fight for equality of women continued from 1900, one of the leading feminist activists called Pankhurst incited a meeting to rebellion. This speech, though not quite a famous one in freedom fighting, not to be compared to a very popular one, Death or Freedom. The speech was made to the Women's Social and Political Union, which Emmeline Pankhurst herself set up in October 1912, and stirred up the passion of all those who heard it. Amongst other things, Pankhurst urged her supporters to be militant in their own way and to do whatever they can to express their militancy. Protests in the House of Commons, smash windows, and express your anger and attack the sacred idol of property. She explained that because the militancy of Baptists had helped to bring about change back then, the suffragette must also adopt radical tactics of civil disobedience. Her last word, though, and perhaps the most powerful one, to rapturous applause and cheers in the auditorium, Pankhurst finished by exclaiming, "I incite this meeting to rebellion," and addressing the movement, "Take me if you dare, but this isn't just a foolhardy rhetoric." Many suffragettes spent time in prison for their actions, and a larger number of them went on hunger strike whilst behind bars. So, whatever the government does to her, Pankhurst declared, "You will not keep me in the prison," making her speech more than just a radical call to arms, but an open defiance of the government oppression. This defiance went on for 2 more years until the outbreak of World War I, when many suffrage women and the movement dedicated themselves toward the war effort. It was at that end of the war, in 1918, that the first women from 8.4 million of them got the vote in the United States, in the United Kingdom. I want you people to understand the evolution of freedom that all of you enjoy today, that people paid price. Many, including the government, did not believe in the vision. And I call them the visionary leaders of this world. Every freedom fighter is a visionary leader. Vision carriers. We see tomorrow. We see years to come. And after we are gone, our world will become law to those that are still alive. That is exactly the way it is. Everything we do today will become your law, because we see the future that the idiotic and the buffoon leaders of today could not see. Corrupt leaders who only interested in their selfish interests, who only interest and nothing else. So we see beyond human comprehension. Just like today, we build and unveil Biafra army because we know that in this 2024, Nigeria will be at war. The Islamists will be everywhere killing Nigerians. Today, only in Biafra land that they are not killing. Our security challenges in Biafra is state-sponsored, state agent, and state police and military in uniform. These are the security challenges that Biafra people are facing today. Not terrorists from Sahel. They don't dare to come. We control our territory. And we deal with them whenever we want. Now our focus is on the legitimization of Nigeria. A vision that Simon Ekpa and the Biafra government saw, including Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, saw it many years ago. These are visionary leaders that carries vision and want to use it to change their life, or the life of their people, before it is late. Evolution of freedom. The evolution of freedom, and someone must take the lead. The Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic government in exile is taking that bullet today. And I will take the bullet for Biafra all the way to Biafra freedom and on your behalf. I want us to look at Gandhi, one of the most famous An important speech of Gandhi is Quit India. Quit India. It played a central role in the Quit India movement, which helped to gain India independence from Britain. In the speech, Gandhi reinforced his commitment to pacifism and non-violence. A non-violent soldier of freedom will covet nothing for himself. He fights only for the freedom of his country. He also declared that once independence has been won, it will be the people of India to decide democratically who rule their country.
Yes.
He expressed his wish for equal freedom for all and India independence, but he encouraged his supporters not to hate the British people, only to hate British imperialism. He went on to say, we must therefore purge ourselves of hatred, because hatred can never bring about justice. Instead, the Indian independence movement must be a friend to the British, whilst also fighting for the freedom of their country. Only then will their movement succeed. The sentiment of this speech are very similar to Gandhi. I want to avoid violence, which he made during his 1922 trial. Again, he urged the people of India towards non-violence, yet he was imprisoned, and explained, violent non-cooperation only multiplies evil. It is this pacifism that Gandhi is most highly regarded for, and it was his work for India's independence that won the country's its freedom in 1947. The Biafra people are not taking the non-violent approach of Gandhi, because the first question they should ask is, who is violent? See, the Biafra people or the Nigeria Islamic State? But I will come to that. I want to take Biafrans back to the days of Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba. We are going to show to the world that black man can do this. That was the speech. What black man can do. Fellow Biafrans, I can assure you today that those of them who are the armies of Congo in Biafra land will be eliminated in due time. By true patriotic Biafra forces, you will have no place in Biafra. I am referring and sending direct message to the army of Congo. Those army of Congo that are loyal to the enablers and killers of their own people that eliminated and assassinated Patrice Lumumba. The dream of Congo died with Lumumba. When the Congo gained its independence in 1960, its new prime minister, Patrice Lumumba, made this passionate and momentous speech to his country people. He described the struggle of his countrymen for independence as one of tears, fire, and blood. This struggle Lumumba went on should make them profoundly proud, because it was a noble and just struggle that put an end to the humiliating bondage imposed on us by force, just like the Biafran people are going through it today. His countrymen had suffered. They were insulted just like the Biafra people, simply because of the color of their skin. They were, as he said, treated as second-class citizens. just like the Biafra people can never be president in Nigeria, living in tumble-down straw huts, whilst the white Europeans live in magnificent houses in the Congo's city. But all of this had passed. The Congo regained its independence, and in that freedom, Lumumba was determined to show the world what the black man can do. Just like many of us in Biafra liberation are saying today. Their country would be the center of radiance of the whole of Africa. They would establish new just laws, put an end to discrimination, and strive for a peace of courage and goodwill. Lumumba plan constituted a truly inspiring, hopeful vision. But sadly, a year after Congo's independence, Lumumba was killed by troop loyal to the army chief, and his dream for Congo never become reality. Those of you in Biafra land that are waiting to become the Congo Army Congo, or Congo, or those army of Congo in Biafra land, you will be eliminated in due time by the true patriotic forces. You will never have a place in Biafra land. The Congo army will never have a place in Biafra land after independence of Biafra has been restored.
Yes.
Fellow Biafrans, I can go on and on and on, making references to the evolution of freedom, how men and the women shaping the world that we all enjoy today by their sacrifice and selfless services to their people. Of course, I cannot end this great speech today and address to the Biafra people as we are making progress without making reference to Martin Luther King Jr. in his speech, I Have a Dream. King started by describing the miracles of the segregation of the chains of discrimination under which African American has suffered for so many years, despite their supposed emancipation. He refers to the Declaration of Independence as a bad check, as far as black people were concerned, in that their unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness had never been upheld. But Martin Luther King saw hope after this summer of the Negro legitimate discontent. There would be an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. And unless this came about, the whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation. And I am borrowing from King that Biafra Liberation Army, Biafra resistance fighters, as long as Biafra continue to suffer under Nigeria, we will continue to revolt, and there will never be peace in Nigeria until Biafra exit.
Yes.
We will make sure that the war is all over Nigeria for the liberation and the freedom of our people, and of course, for the self-defense of our people. We are going to make sure that every security apparatus in Nigeria will be decimated in time. That's where the attack against Biafra are being planned.
Support.
So allow us to go, or you will be given hell. King also mentioned and said, but in urging revolution like Gandhi, King urged against violence and hate. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. After all, the freedom of white people is inextricably bound to our freedom, he said. It is then that King described his dream, a dream that is deeply rooted in the American dream, that one day we will recognize that all men are created equal. Now, referring to the first John Ball, that all men are alike. After decade, many years, King Martin Luther King made a reference to that. The hope that one day sons of former slave and sons of former slave owner will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. It is a dream that is rooted in love, in compassion for the whole of mankind, a dream of equality and brotherhood. King ended his speech with the famous exclamation, "Let freedom ring." And indeed, freedom did ring in 1964. The Civil Rights Act was passed, and in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, which finally gave federal agencies effective power to enforce the right of black Americans if it is wearing for King and if it wearing for the great speech in Washington. Perhaps those acts would never have become a reality. Today, they left the problem and start tackling it at home. But I have this to tell the enablers in Biafra land that are releasing speeches and press release against the Biafra sit at home. True peace is not measured by the absence of tension emanating from sit at home. But peace in Biafra land will be measured by the presence of justice, and where there is no justice, there is no peace. The evolution of freedom. I want to refrain myself and repeat what I said for easy understanding. My message to Nigeria Islamic State today: they left the problem they created and start tackling Biafra sit at home. But I will tell them this, to those enablers, that for you to have peace and to measure the peace, whether in Biafra territory or other parts of Nigeria, peace cannot be measured by the absence of tensions emanating from sit-at-home order. But peace will only be measured by the presence of justice. And where there is no justice, there is no peace. Mazen Ambikano is still illegally being detained. It
Don't
is
worry.
fact. Court
Don't
has
worry.
freed him. Why Boko Haram are being recruited into the Nigerian army? Biafrans are being abducted, enforcing their disappearance every day. Of course, we will never lay down our arms until Biafra is achieved.